Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Will Marm. I'm a 20-year Special Forces veteran and graduate of the Bancroft Capital's Veteran Training Program. I'm working on the capital markets desk. Welcome to this iteration of the Patriot Lunch. I put together this quarterly series because I wanted to highlight one high-performing, transitioning veteran to a broad spectrum of corporate America. And it's my intent to break down these barriers for everyone on the call to gain a better appreciation of these skill sets that veterans bring to the nation. We've had some dialogue recently. Transitioning from the military is a process. It's not a singular event. It's not like turning in uniforms and getting a job. It heavily depends on building relationships and sharing your story. So with this Patriot Lunch, that's what we want to do. We succeed when Don's story is told and when those relationships are made and strengthened. I'll connect you afterwards with Don.
That was my question. No.
There you go. I'll connect you with Don after this webinar, and I encourage you to follow up with him. We'll have time at the end for questions and comments. So either text me, through Zoom, raise your Zoom hand, we'll get you in the queue. I'd like to say thank you to Constellation Brands. They're our partners, and they've donated a special bottle of wine as a door prize. It's a Bordeaux blend created by the famous winemaker Erica Jensen of Booker Vineyard in San Luis Obispo. Constellation Brands is a leading beer, wine, and spirits company in North America and keenly focused on veterans issues. So should your registration number be the lucky winner, we'll contact you, get an address, and deliver this special bottle to your front door. So thank you, Danielle and Constellation Brands. I'll give you an overview of Bancroft Capital. Bancroft Capital is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business operating as an institutional broker-dealer and small investment bank. Our mission is to train and empower transitioning veterans and first responders to succeed in the financial services industry. So we accomplish that mission through our structured veteran training program, of which I'm a product of that best-in-class program. Our company pays for that program through our core lines of business, which are services and products and cash management, public finance, fixed income, debt and equity capital markets, secondary trading, and investment banking. So please, to our corporate partners, remember us if you ever need these services. So now for the main event, we're pleased to welcome Lieutenant Colonel retired Don Kingston. Don comes to us in partnership with the Special Operators Transition Foundation. Don is an Army veteran with 21 plus years of experience. He graduated from the University of Rochester with a bachelor's and a master's degree in chemical engineering. And his time in the Army was spent as an infantry officer with multiple combat tours with the 75th Ranger Regiment, which is a very specialized, our most elite infantry raid force, probably the world's most elite infantry raid force. Don then led through a series of awesome assignments that he'll get through and he'll talk through, but he finished up his career leading a very unique Army unit that operates as consultants to our partners and allies in the Pacific Rim, and their mission was to foster innovation with our allies and partners, integrate new technologies, and outthink our competitors. So this unit was designed to outthink the bad guys. So presently, Don is a managing director at a firm that removes the barriers to commercialization and facilitates innovation with the right strategic partners to help truly scale their products and services, scale facilitation. So Don, we are grateful for you to be here. Thank you for your time, excited dialogue. Please kick us off with a personal intro.
Hey, thanks, Will, and thanks to you and your team at Bancroft and for everybody joining us here today. Really appreciate the chance. So like Will said, I finished my degree. I finished my defense of my thesis for my master's degree. And 2 weeks later, I was in basic training in South Carolina to start my Army career. Thought I was just going to do a couple of years running around in the woods, playing with guns, having some fun, and then go off to see what the what the world was about. Wound up having a great time and kind of started my career from there. Became an infantry officer, spent the first 10 years of my career leading those smaller formations, spent a lot of time in Iraq and Afghanistan, doing tours with the Ranger Regiment, doing everything from fighting in the cities and deserts of Iraq to up and down 10,000-foot mountains in various provinces of Afghanistan. From there, moved my career, started moving more towards the business side of the Army. So still an infantry officer, but you start to become more of the generalist. So started to lead larger and larger formations and teams, doing the budget, the planning, all the oversight for organizations, and wound up working in the personnel side for the Army for a couple of years. Worked for the chief personnel officer for the Army, responsible for manning all the officers and people like me across the Army and doing that talent management and helping him manage the over 80,000 officers across the globe and where they were assigned. From there, I finished out my career, like Will talked about, the Army Asymmetric Warfare Group, which was started to help with innovation in combat. It came out of a need in Iraq. Too many of the same lessons were being relearned in a very unfortunate way in Iraq and Afghanistan. Too many people were experiencing the same booby traps, IEDs, things like that. It started from that need, and it came to, hey, how do we apply this across the globe? How do we get in front of that to make sure we'll continue to innovate from the next threat that's out there? And so that was how I spent my last few years in the Army. I had a piece of that group. We were focused on the Pacific, looking to, hey, is there technology that already exists we could use in a new way to help give us an advantage? Is there new technology out there we could incorporate into ongoing things for an advantage? And what things are people doing out there in the world that might become threats? Things like, how are people using UAVs that we're seeing in current things in the Ukraine and things like that? We were looking at things like that as far as 4 or 5 years ago, trying to figure out what can you do about that to help protect soldiers or to maybe use it for our own advantage. So from that, I got interested in technology and incorporating that, and thought I was going to keep doing that for a while in the Army, but Army sent me to Maryland, which is where I'm originally from, and realized that I enjoyed being around my family. Part of 21 years, you're not always there. I saw some of my nieces and nephews more in the first year I lived here in Maryland than I had in their first 13 years. And I was like, you know what, I like this. And we decided it was time to set down roots and figure out what it means to transition and retire from the Army. And luckily there was the great organization that Bill talked about, SOTF, that helped me. That was one of the big organizations that helped me figure out where it was I wanted to go, and their partnership with all the corporate partners out there. And that's how I found where I'm at now at Scale Facilitation. Is our CEO, Dave Collard, is a big believer in, he wanted people like us, people that were comfortable with ambiguity, but could help build things from scratch to help a company grow and operate across the globe. And that's what I've been doing for the last year, is helping to, we went from 2 locations across the globe, and I believe I was employee number 3 in the United States, to now we are about to hire our 50th employee, and we are in 4 countries across the globe and continuing to grow and help others grow as well. So that's where I'm at now. I'd love to talk more about, how did I decide where I wanted to go post Army? How did I decide what I wanted to do? And really just highlight that getting that opportunity and having those conversations, like Will said, is a big part of that.
Thanks, Don. Fantastic. Yeah, the conversations, the network, sharing your story, learning other people's story, critical to that transition. And you nailed it. Transition's a process. It's not a singular event. It's not like, throwing those old boots in the trash can, which was a bittersweet moment. I don't know what you did with it. I did not bronze mine. Mine went somewhere.
I think I kept 1 pair, and that's to mow the yard with. That's about it.
To mow the yard, yeah. Good. So listen, we'll kick off into some questions. For the audience, Don and I, kind of molded a piece of clay together into the dialogue. We'll stick to it, or we'll throw it out the window. It doesn't really matter. So, hey, your career spanned many years of intensive combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as other less kinetic but equally important deployments around the world. is there a particular operation or event that you consider memorable that you want to share with us?
So one of the biggest things that I carried forward, and it was an unfortunate way to learn a lesson, but one of the biggest in Afghanistan in the 2009 period, we went and started. That was a pretty violent time in Afghanistan. That was the big surge, trying to with General McChrystal taking over and trying to work there. As a part of that, I was a Ranger Company commander. I took command about 6 weeks before we left. I had quick time to get to know everybody and went to Afghanistan. As part of that, we wound up in some pretty in southern Afghanistan, probably one of the worst areas at the time in terms of hostilities and outright combat. Pretty much every day we were getting shot at or flying into dangerous situations. On one of those missions, unfortunately, it was everything went wild. I mean, it was one of those ones, pretty much everybody was in contact. There was gunfights in multiple directions, and it was a pretty hairy day. I was not there on the ground. It was one of my platoons, a team of about 40 individuals on the ground. And that was part of the frustrating part, was not being able to be there to help have that impact and trying to figure out how to help. But they were able to fight through it, get to their objective and complete the mission. But unfortunately, during part of that, one of the young Rangers, Corporal William Kopp, was wounded and wound up later dying of his wounds. He managed to make it back to Walter Reed. Unfortunately, he passed away. And it's one of those ones, I still wear his bracelet to this day to remember that. And it's because the lessons that came from that. It was, even though we had tried to make sure everything was right, sometimes you have to, there's an art to it. It's not science in terms of leadership, especially in the Army. And sometimes you have to make a call. And it was one of those days I didn't agree with it, but we did it. And someone had to make that call. But also it was, even though we thought we had done everything right, sometimes things can happen that are beyond your control. And it's how you react to it and how you deal with the aftermath from that is what sets it apart. So even though we lost Ben, and it was a tragic day, and it affected all of us deeply, there were some personal lessons I took away from that, but also there's a lot of things that we gained from it. I used to look at this bracelet and think of the loss and how everyone suffered that day, but also looking at it now as time has gone on and realize how much he gained. Friends with his mother, became close with a lot of guys who were there on the ground that we still talk to this day and keep track of each other and check in on each other. Some other great friends that have come from it, and some things that have benefited me in life too. And yes, it's a sad situation, but even a terrible, hairy thing like that can give you lessons and value in other ways in your life that you may not realize at the time. And that's why one of those ones that sticks with me. Like I said, this bracelet has been on my wrist pretty much nonstop for the last, since 2009. When his mother gave it to me, I have had this original bracelet because that's how memorable it was to me to this day.
That's it's a poignant, heart-wrenching story. And Don, thanks for sharing that. Some of the notes I took there is what I think carries forward. Yes, you have a symbol of that relationship, of that responsibility that you had. And that's an incredible amount of responsibility that people don't understand, and I'm really glad you're helping us understand that a little bit better. And that you didn't wake up that morning thinking that's what's going to happen. And nature of the Rangers, they get a call, roughly an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Yeah. You're on a plane.
It was one of those ones. It was probably less than 2 hours.
Yeah, you're moving to contact, and you are delivering the pointy end of the spear to people who want to do the same thing to you. And the point that you made there, you keep in touch with the guys on the ground and the folks. So that's critically important, especially now as time kind of keeps on going. That buddy call is critically important. We've got partnerships with Stop Soldier Suicide through some of our clients and obviously organizationally. And it's that buddy call, a 5 to 10 minutes phone call, unprovoked, unprompted, uncoordinated. hey, Johnny, hey, Dave, hey, Joe, how you doing? That type of thing. That carries the weight, that you can possibly can't even really imagine. So thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
So the next kind of general question I think we should talk through, Don, is given the specialized nature of your career, how did you approach transition to the civilian world? Because you aren't going to get that specialized like so
No.
quickly. And so, how did you give us some insights to the corporate America that's on the line now?
So I think a lot of my career. I hope I laid it out. I was a generalist. Yes, I had a skill set the Army trained me in, but a lot of what I had to do transition throughout my career, I became a generalist. I did personnel, I did budget, I did oversight for a while on intelligence, an intelligence program. I did the 5-year planning and budgeting for an entire aspect of the Army. It's all those business functions. If you were relate to it, you're not a subject matter expert all the time like some others. You become a generalist. So that was actually kind of my curse when I first decided to start transitioning. Is everything sounded interesting because I had done a bunch of everything. When I was in the Army, I was like, well, I've done that, so that sounds interesting. Or maybe, and I think that's where those conversations we talked about, whether it's, hey, I met someone, I reached out to someone through LinkedIn. I saw you do this. Could you spend 10 minutes with me on the phone and explain what that means? Or the organizations like SOTF. This was the huge benefit I personally got from SOTF, was helping me kind of refine my list and narrow it down. And in fact, most of the people they introduced me to in the beginning and the conversations they set up for me helped me to just realize things I didn't want to do, which was very helpful to me to start narrowing down those options. And then what it helped me realize is, and why I'm with the firm I'm with now, is I like every day is not the same. And it's not I'm not just keeping the trains running on time. It's they're dealing with ambiguity and uncertainty. And I realized that I had the appetite for that based on what I had done, but also I had the advantage of being retired. I had some safety net associated with that, with being a retirement. So I wanted to try something totally new out of my comfort zone. It'd be very easy being here outside DC, go back to being a defense contractor and basically show up at the same job the next day. Just I'm Mr. Don now instead of, Lieutenant Colonel Kingston. But I wanted to do something totally different. And through SOTF was able to find Dave Collard and found someone willing to take a risk on me, which was great. And that's, I think, why I have done well there and enjoyed my time there and continue to thrive there, is because he wanted people who were experienced to help him build process and structure out of ambiguity and uncertainty, because we were a younger team spread across the globe trying to work. That 12 to 13 hour time difference with Australia can be challenging. Needed people who could work with that. And that's what we've been doing. And we use our skill sets we learned in the military. There's 3 of us that came on at the same time, 3 SOTF alums, Mike, Jeff, and myself, all started within a month of each other. We use and leverage our strengths we built in the military, but it's to help build the business functions of the company. So Jeff was comfortable with building networks of talking to people and helping to do that business development and find the needs of customers. Mike was very experienced with helping to run the operations side and manage and build the process and how are we going to do these things. And I was very comfortable with all of my work in the personnel side. There's a lot of rules, regulations, and laws you have to follow. I was very comfortable in the policy and compliance realm because I had some experience in that. And we leveraged those strengths and each other's strengths to help build this team. And I think that's what I wanted to portray, is everybody's journey is going to be different. You can leverage those strengths you had, but you can also use them to find other ways to use them to benefit whatever team it is you join after you leave the military.
Wonderful. Yeah, the note I took down is, leveraging your strengths, to dial in where you think your best fits are. And yes, there's the Special Operators Transition Foundation, which as I am an alum, as well as a wonderful organization with some just amazing structure and processes there to drive veterans through that kind of transition process.
And
So,
I think, Will, if I could,
Mhm.
one thing I think that I didn't mention is the other great thing about those conversations with people as you're pondering transition or organizations like SODA is helping you realize your more experience, your experiences you have and your abilities apply in more ways than you realize to the business world. When you think of the military, whether it's Army, Marines, you don't think of dealing with customers. Hey, you haven't dealt with customers. Actually, yes, you have. You had, your customer was the American public. There was the areas you were going to and things you were expected to achieve. Yes, it was your boss in the military, but they're a customer. Or you might have a higher headquarters in another part of the world. You serve those a customer. The example I'd give is in my last job there in asymmetric warfare group. Yes, I was stationed here in Maryland, but I worked for the 4-star Army general in Hawaii who was responsible for 85,000 people and countless organizations spread across from Mongolia to Australia to Alaska. And I had to figure out he was my customer. Yes, I belonged to another organization, but what I did supported what it was he wanted to achieve in that area of the world. I had to be able to talk to him and the people who worked for him, divine their needs and figure out a business plan to be able to go do that, to justify his use of resources, time, and money to achieve what it was he wanted. So you've done those things. So don't sell yourself short either, I think is where I know for me personally, that was something I was intimidated by the business world initially that sort of helped me see is, no, you've actually done some of these things. You just used a different language to talk about it in the past.
Yeah, great point. And I hope that message resonates with our corporate audience and that, it's a translation service that's required basically, but the core skill sets, are strong and carry you through the vast majority of these business processes. Hey, let's move on to a story here. Talk us through the Jessica Lynch rescue. I don't have no idea what the average age is of the audience, but maybe start from what it was.
Okay, so early on in Iraq, during the invasion of Iraq, Jessica Lynch was part of, and her maintenance company were driving through southern Iraq. I believe it was Nasiriyah. They were caught in they were ambushed. A couple of them were killed, and Jessica Lynch was taken hostage. As we know, one of our primary things that brings reassurance to every service member and in our country is no one's left behind. We will come to find you and get you. By the location of where we were, the basis of where we were in the invasion of Iraq, our part of 1st Ranger Battalion, we were assigned to go help with that. So we flew across the country, landed on the ground. I think we had a total of about 6 or 8 hours to finalize our plan and figure out where things were, to then join this team of teams from across Iraq that came together in Nasiriyah, which is when we showed up, that's where the Marines had been. And they told us horrendous stories of what had been going on there for weeks. Direct contact across the river, trading artillery shells, large explosives back and forth with the enemy, and just that it was going to be a hair-raising situation. So we were ready for what happened because we're like, hey, this is important. It's what we need to go do. Being on the ground, we drove in. I remember there was a barricade on this one bridge. It was the only way into town. They had piled up the Iraqis. It was actually the remnants of the Republican Guard, the premier fighting force of the Iraqis, piled up vehicles as a roadblock. So we were able to plow through it and drive. And we were expecting World War III to break loose. We weren't sure what was going to happen. Luckily, it didn't. There was things had moved on. The Marines had done their job and basically convinced all the bad guys, the majority of the bad guys, to leave. But we were able to get to the hospital where some other elements rescued Jessica, flew her out, and then we had we began the process, for lack of a better term. We began to look for some of her compatriots that were with her on the ground that day that unfortunately succumbed to their wounds and didn't make it. We were able to recover some of our fellow Americans there, bring them all back with us, and it was one of those things. It's a terrible situation to have to go to, but being able to bring closure to those families and their friends and things like that, it's one of those things that will forever stick with you. And it's there's a group of my friends. We were all there. We were young leaders that day on the ground, and every one of us, every year, it's both it's kind of our coping humor. It's not to make light of it, but it was on April Fool's Day, so it's our joking name for it amongst our friends is it's the April Fool's Day raid. But we, to this day, like you said, we check on each other, we talk to each other, and those group of 4 of us that were there together on the ground as young officers, this is one of our first things we're doing in combat in Iraq during the invasion, is we successfully had one of the first American prisoner of war rescues since in over 40 years. So getting to be a part of that, it's something that's cemented us together for life and get to carry on and check with each other, regardless of what we're doing now. So.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Don. Yeah, I remember that, hearing about that mission, talking with some of your colleagues that were on it, and those details. And I mean, the non-doctrinal term would be the audacity of the mission, but the quite literally the surprise, the speed, the violence of action that a smaller raiding force used to gain that momentum and drive to accomplish that mission. Of course, that's kind of the easy part. The harder part is to get off the objective, and because you're in no man's land, bad guy territory. But at the same time, you're doing what you got to do and recover, her colleagues that were in the basement of a house. Thanks for you guys' valor and bravery to deliver justice and also close those wounds or begin the process. Hey, Todd, when you were an aide, you mentioned you met a very special Medal of Honor recipients. For the audience out there, Medal of Honor recipients, they're special folks. There's like 66 living Medal of Honor recipients in America, and unfortunately, this man, I don't know if he's still alive, but he's a hero. And I'd like you to tell his story and how you met him.
Yeah. So back to your question earlier about memorable things. This is, and again, one of those great things serving in the military can give you. I was an aide, so for lack of a better term, I was a personal assistant and also a chief of staff to Army 3-star general responsible for all special operations in the Army. As part of his job, he got to go what was called community engagement, go give speeches at events, get to participate in things to represent the Army to the American people. One great thing, and usually I got to go with him, which was pretty neat. So one event we got to go to, there is every year in California at the Reagan Library, is the Medal of Honor Foundation, which is an organization that helps to promote, I believe one of their programs is promoting values and character amongst school-age kids across America. And they raise money to help, whether it's film videos or send Medal of Honor recipients to these schools to talk to school children and help use their stories to tell these examples. Well, one guy I got to meet there was Tibor Teddy Rubin. So there's the big grand gala banquet at the Reagan Library, but the night before, it's the Medal of Honor recipients, their families, and a few special invited guests. And that's where my boss was giving his speech. So I got to go to this. Well, I met Tibor Teddy Rubin. He happened to be sitting at the table next to us. And his story is one of those ones that stuck with me, because when you hear Medal of Honor, you think of, heroic last ditch stands. You fought off 200 enemy by yourself, which he did, by the way. But the real reason he got his Medal of Honor is even more impressive, or earned his Medal of Honor. He was a Hungarian Jewish Hungarian Jew in World War II, was sent to a concentration camp. He learned how he survived the concentration camp. And when he was liberated by the American Army, he called him G.I. Joe. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to go to America and be like those G.I. Joes that rescued him. So he came to America and he joined the US Army and wound up in the Korean War. He went to Korea, where he, as part of his unit's operations in Korea, yes, he did hold off an entire, I believe it was Chinese or North Korean company with a machine gun by himself, but he was captured and sent to a POW camp in North Korea. And it was what he did is he's credited with keeping over 40 of his fellow soldiers and captives alive in the POW camp for years, based on what he had learned to survive in the concentration camp. So he went from concentration camp, came to America, became a prisoner of war again, he brought hope. Like, that was the big thing. And if you read his Medal of Honor citation, he's credited with bringing hope back to these prisoners and giving them purpose for being alive. He would sneak out at night and steal food at his risk to his own life and safety. He did everything he could to keep his fellow prisoners alive, that he was then, as they reviewed medals and awards from the past, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. And it's both for his last stand against the Chinese and North Koreans, but more so for his work in the POW camp and keeping his fellow prisoners alive for years. And it's just one of those ones that stuck with me for life. It's, oh, wow, I got to meet this American hero. And, it's also a great example of, he was an immigrant to our country, served our country, and never gave up on it, and continued to thrive and keep others alive. And it's just one of those stories that stuck with me forever.
Yeah, that's an amazing story of determination, persistence, survival, the instinct to just keep going and keep, just keep fighting, surviving. But you mentioned bringing hope to the prisoners, which kept them alive. And that hope is amazing. I mean, it's amazing. When you're hopeless, it's going to be a short road.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite books is I'm sure you've read it, Dr. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. It's it's like the art of suffering. And he was a Jewish, I don't know if he was a psychiatrist or an MD. Well, he's an MD, but if he was in I think he was a psychiatrist before he was, imprisoned in the Holocaust. And it's a wonderful book. Okay, so we're at 12:35. This is the mark to be bringing in questions from the audience. We have a couple that have come in, and I'd like to give it a sec here to see if any more come in. But while we're waiting on those, tell us about the Army commercial. I've never met a movie star, and I want to send I wish you could sign my shirt or something here, but tell us about that, man.
Well, first off, so I have to set the stage. So my wife is the movie star of the family. Behind the camera is and behind the scenes is much more my comfort zone. So my wife is a on-air personality for the Home Shopping Network. She does that, and she does it well. Speaking of leveraging your strengths, that is hers. Mine is behind the camera and helping her achieve that success. So I got, as happens in the Army, I got voluntold, which is a contraction of, I didn't really volunteer. I got told, but you make a joke. I voluntold to be in an Army commercial. And they were looking for different people from across the special operations in the Army. They wanted us to be in this commercial. And I literally got paid by the Army one day to walk up and down a wet sidewalk in Fayetteville, North Carolina, the home of Army Special Operations, and get paid to wear my beret and walk around with a couple guys I knew, and we were cracking jokes and probably giving the director a hard time, but got to walk up and down. However, since then, I thought nothing of it. I was like, whatever. I mean, I didn't really want to do it anyway, but we're like, whatever. Well, it's one of those things that has haunted me. I don't know if you remember from Lethal Weapon, where Danny Glover's character, he diffuses the guy with the flamethrower by doing the chicken dance, and they keep putting the paper up every time he leaves the office. It has become like that for me. The pictures or the video periodically reappear, and it is my wife's favorite thing to harass me to no end. I've had friends send me pictures. It's been on the side of an Army 18-wheeler. they're at some event where there's one of the Army recruiting trucks, and I'm just like, oh. I've had my cousin, when he was in doing ROTC at his college, he's like, hey, I watched this movie today as we were doing this, and look who I saw in the movie. And I'm just like, oh no. And then yes, they literally, one of the pictures they took, it wound up on an Army calendar. And needless to say, my wife has, I think, 10 copies of it still floating around. She harasses me with every now and then. But it was it was a cool thing. And for those of you who didn't know, yes, they use actual members of the military to be in those Army commercials that you see out there.
That's like your big break right there. So, I mean, like you're probably getting royalties from that, right? Like lifetime MREs or something, or what?
I wish. No, you pretty much sign away your rights to any and everything, and the Army owns it forever. That's why it keeps reappearing, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Well, we all have those, flashes of stardom, but that's neat. Maybe your wife can figure out a way to incorporate that into the home shopping network. I'm showing the waters with that one. No, I'm kidding. So, hey, tell us about your time hanging out with Saddam Hussein.
So again, back in the early days of Iraq, I think it was one of my subsequent trips, so not the invasion, but one of the great things was the hunt for Saddam Hussein. And when he was finally captured, he was held before he was given over to the Iraqi government for them to try him in their courts. We were there and we had to help guard him. And of course, he's a very important person. They weren't sure if people were going to try and come rescue him. So a bunch of us got drafted to help guard him. So, and one of the jobs was they needed commissioned officers to sit in a room with him. So it was, as you do with all things valuable or very important, you have multiple people there to watch and keep an eye on it. So I had to sit there with one of my medics, and we literally sat there and had to watch him sleep and pretend to not speak English, and just sit there with him in the cell and spend a couple hours of my life with him. And it was one of those things, it's a surreal experience. You've just spent months of your life trying to catch this person that you've seen on TV. I mean, I remember being during the original Gulf War in college and high school when that went on, and seeing that and knowing who Saddam Hussein was from then, and then all of a sudden flash forward to years later, I'm like, I'm literally sitting in a room with this man who's been on TV since I was in high school as this despot, worldwide despot and strongman. And here I am sitting here watching him sleep on an Army cot like I would be doing on a normal day if I wasn't sitting here doing this. So just one of those totally surreal experiences. You never thought in the world I'd be doing this, but oh wow, I'm actually sitting here watching this man.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. How I mean, you're at I guess kind of the right place, the right time to be able to have that experience. But yeah, you're the parallels there too. I think about that time I was in Uday Hussein's. I was in his son's palace. There in at that point, then it was called the Green Zone. So, all right, moving to a little, I think we have time for maybe one more question. This is a generic one. How would you introduce yourself to a stranger?
Okay. So this is a little bit of background on this one, and it's tied kind of to the story about Corporal Cop I told earlier. Knowing that my personality is and what it is, and one of the great benefits we have in special operations is we get to deal with psychologists to help us. It's used to help find the right personalities who's going to be able to survive and thrive there. You also get to get feedback about, hey, this is what you're doing. This is ways you could maybe make yourself better to help you optimize to be a better leader, person, performer, what it is. Well, when I was about midway through my career, I got some pretty pointed and sharp feedback from one of these operational psychologists. And it was because we did a, common practice in business now, we did a 360-degree assessment. I had people who worked for me, people who were my peers, and people who I worked for got to evaluate me on a range of characteristics and how I dealt with things. And then I got the benefit of, I got to sit down with the psychologist afterwards, and he helped interpret it.
And he walked into that meeting. I didn't know what to expect. And he gave me a figurative punch in the nose. He's like, I bet your peers hate you and you don't get along with them. And I was like, what? And, honestly, to be right, I had had some conflict with some of my peers earlier on in my career. This is about midway through my career, about 10 years in. Got along well. I did well for my superiors. People who were part of the formations I was in enjoyed it, but I sometimes struggled with my peers. And he's like, hey, this is why. He was able to explain to it. He's like, you are quiet by nature. You take a while to sit there and form your opinions. You don't just feel the need to speak. He's like, your peers unfortunately view that as you're being judgmental and you feel you're better than them. So it's causing this. So here's what I want you to do. He's like, next time you walk into a room, you meet people for the first time, just address it outright. Hey, I'm quiet by nature. It takes me a while to warm up to people. I know it can cause me to sometimes come across as a little aloof or elitist. I'm really not. Please seek me out. Please talk. Please help me be a part of this team. So I've taken that forward. The first time, I think it was about a year later, I got a brand new assignment at Fort Lewis, Washington, and I tried it. I literally walked in. I was like, all right, let's see what happened. I walked in and I was like, hey, my name's Don. I'm a bit quiet. I can come across this way. He gave me a much more pejorative term to address it when I said it. And it just kind of shocked everybody, but it got everyone to relax. And it helped. And it helped me. It helped them. It helped us right from the get-go form that team and go. So now I do that. My current job here, last year when I retired, the day I started on a thing like this on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, hey, my name's Don. I'm quiet. I know it can come across wrong. I don't mean it that way. Please seek me out. I want to talk. I want to be involved. I want to help. And I found it has helped me a lot. I've done a lot better with my peers. I do a lot better performance. My career went much better after that. And so it's something I tried to carry forward. And it's also something I leverage, when you are part of a team, it's all about how your strengths complement each other. It was something I've carried forward too, is to people I work with. Hey, I know I can get overly mission focused and forget about the people side sometimes, or forget, as one of my coworkers used to say, he's like, you need to smile more in your emails or when you talk to people. So that was the job I charged him with. I was like, hey, I need you to remind me to smile a bit more in my dealings with people and remember some of that to help me. And so being aware of that, gaining that self-awareness has helped me. And that's why I use that today when I introduce myself to people is I force myself out of my comfort zone to, because I know I'm quiet, but also I've helped, it's been disarming and helped me get that conversation going with people and help form the team and that bond much better right away.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I don't think it's really nice to be able to know that and use it. So listen, we have to cut it off. We're getting to the end. We had a lot of great questions, a lot of great conversations, Don. We're running out of time. For the audience, if you didn't have your question answered, we can coordinate a follow-up. Like I said, I'm gonna send an email out, just linking you up with Don and then build that network, together one-on-one. My email is in my address. Should you have anything or feedback. To our friends in the audience, we hope that this Patriot Lunch has provided you an opportunity to enjoy a small group dialogue with an accomplished military veteran. Don has, freely chosen to serve and sacrifice 21 years for our country and our way of life. And for that, Don, we're very, very grateful for everything you've done for us and for the red, white, and blue. To the audience, thanks for your time and attention. We're going to email out the notice for the next quarterly Patriot Lunch, which is in November 17th. We're gonna branch out of the Army and we're gonna talk to a Navy guy, good friend of ours, a transitioning guy. So feel free to forward that invite out to everyone in your network. Share those good news of these accomplished military veterans that are entering our workforce. Don, would you like to share any final words?
Well, thanks again, Will, to you and your firm and for everyone for being here today and for giving me this opportunity. And just really, it's, if you're a veteran in the audience or you're thinking about transitioning, reach out, don't be afraid, have those conversations, leverage the resources that are out there, whether it's other people or organizations like SOTA.
And if you are someone who's already transitioned, make sure you find a way to give back and do that where you can. And one tip, one of the mentors along the way, he's like, yeah, and it's something that helped me a lot. He's like, if you are retiring or transitioning, take a vacation for just you. It's not a trip. And if you don't know the difference, a vacation is you get to go somewhere, you can relax. No one's responsible for making meals. You're not just, doing every day, but in another location. That's a trip. I go to play somewhere, but I got to make dinner every night. That's a trip. You go on vacation, go somewhere, relax, unwind. You don't realize how tired you are. And having an experience like that will actually help you kind of recalibrate.
Yeah.
And for people out there in the business world, think about reaching out to organizations like SOTA. They exist to help make those connections to the veteran space. If you're not sure where to start, reach out to those organizations. That's what my boss did. That's how he wound up. There's 6 SOTA alums that are now working for the company in different shapes and forms. And we continue to grow and interview more as our team grows. So there's lots of people with lots of unique skill sets, lots of veterans that are there that can help you deal with that ambiguity, figure out those problems, and help your business be successful. And if you need a place to start, there's organizations like that can help you get started.
Great points. Great points. Awesome. Hey, Don, thanks for everything you did, man, today and, the last couple of decades. Well done. Proud of you. And thanks to SOTA, Bancroft Capital, and our corporate clients. Hope you all had a great time. Have a great rest of the summer. I think we got maybe a couple more weeks, and see you in November.
Thanks again.
Okay, Don. Take care, everyone.